the mammals suddenly got all frisky and figured out how to eat them or inject them with poison or whatever. Actually, I mean, that interpretation I just gave is considered simplistic. I mean, it's a lot of people say, you know, dinosaurs were declining before the falling star, and mammals were a lot better off than you think. And that's that caricature of T-Rex with a little tiny, you know, mammal diving into its burrow is a little simplistic. So, but it works as a metaphor, so we can keep it here. I mean,
well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I can imagine things that are very useful. For example, I don't know, I'm not biologist here. Are there any body design that has 6 limbs instead of 4? So I'm thinking of a centaur, or those weird horses in Avatar. For example, we have 2 arms, so we can do lots of things with them. And we only have 2 legs to walk. We're not going to compete with a cheetah or something with, but if we have 4 legs, we could run very fast and also do things with our arms.
and the whole sort of back thing could go away too, maybe if we could. Yeah. So I'll offer insects as an example, something that do have 6 limbs, but I think that I can't offer you a reason why that can't be done. I will say, poofing it into existence and then studying it and saying, well, biophysically that'll never work, is one question. Then there's the other question, is there a way to get there from here? Which is a separate question, right? So the question of whether 6-limbed humans would thrive in this particular ecosystem is separate from whether anyone could find a way to make that happen by tinkering with development, balancing adaptation in the meantime, making sure you don't create some monster that immediately starves to death, whatever. You know, that's the harder question, I think. How do you get there from here? Can you imagine centaurs? Because I can't. But not flying elephants.
But that's kind of a good example, I think, because you have this 4-limbed body plan that goes way, way back. So, you know, crocodiles have 4 limbs. And we have 4 limbs. And frogs have 4 limbs. And there's something about that 4-limb body plan that goes way, way back to something much more primitive than any of those specific lineages, perhaps. And I don't know if that plan is dictated by anything, because obviously there's arachnids and there's insects and so forth that have more limbs.
But it's fun to bicker about this. I mean, one position would be, well, there's something pretty optimal about 4 limbs, or else we would have had other solutions.
Well, I don't agree with that, because I don't agree that there's a path to the other solutions.
Right.
There's not a path to the centaur unless you go way, way, way back on the chain.
So, but again, the point is that the mere fact that everything has 4 limbs, and I think you agree with this, doesn't mean that means 4 limbs are super optimal. It might. It might mean that having 4 limbs is the way developmental plans work, and changing that has such an enormous cost, especially when all the niches around you are already occupied.
Exactly.
That the cost of changing is huge. But maybe once you got there, you would suddenly change your mind and say, oh, well, now this is optimal. And, you know, we can't do that experiment.
Well, I mean, I think that could account for large areas of morphospace being unfilled, because we're too far down the line in the niches that fill.
Ralph.
Thanks, Steve.
Warning, this guy actually is a paleontologist, so this could be really bad right here.
I really enjoyed seeing pictures of fossils. The Coffin, by the way, I think the judgment is in those spines are indeed spines, right?
Mm-hmm.
The long
The
pointy
tentacles
were really
are
legs.
legs.
They were just squashed into one plane. So there wasn't as much of a problem as they built it up to. But
Kind of a
that's
trend, yeah.
a beside point. I think that there's no doubt that contingency is really, really important. And Stanley Yockey in his Gifford lectures tried to say that the universe exhibits contingent features all the way along. You said history, same thing, you know, and that's really quite a Christian idea. And at least Yockey said that, and I think he's right. The other thing is that certainly you have adaptive forces or selective forces that move life along certain channels. That's gotta be valid too. So you have to have an interplay between those two kinds of concepts. And I don't see why both shouldn't be Christian. The last point where I'm kind of going is that if you accept that we know something about life's history, then life began as a few simple forms in an aquatic medium. It's moved out onto the terrestrial environment. Things fly now. So I kind of like the cone of increasing diversity. I think it's time to go back to the cone of increasing diversity. And I think that's.
Can we compromise on a cone of increasing complexity? I'm not saying I would like that, but that's a little bit different than increasing diversity.
It depends on how you measure diversity, right? But if you measure it in terms of, say, possible metabolic means in organismal size, in complexity for sure, in nervous integration, in sensory modes, in all kinds of other, John Tyler Bonner, whose work I know you're familiar with, actually had a couple of books about this. And I think Google stimulated a lot of really useful discussion. Some of it was definitely a backlash. And I think you're seeing more people actually talking about increasing diversity or disparity or whatever your terminology is. And I think that might also be a real Christian kind of a thing to think about too.
But it's definitely the case
Not necessarily the latter view of evolution, but the cone of increasing diversity has some merit to it.
I'm just going to quickly point out there was a hand over here somewhere that I mean a new niche is potentially created every time a new species is created, and so the idea that you expect increasing diversity, at least locally, is perfectly reasonable. I think globally, I'm not as sure. But follow up for Ralph or
Let me just. Gary Vermeer, who's an evolutionary biologist at Davis, he's a very interesting guy. I tell my students about that. He's a blind paleontologist, right? He likens, in several books, he likens the evolutionary process to a frankly capitalistic economic system. And he says it's in the business of creating more jobs. And the more niches you open up, the more. The point about the ants was well taken. The more kinds of organisms come on the scene, the more niches you have piggyback on top of that, and that's what's going on in the history of life, creating jobs.
I'm all for that.
Clearly, if you look at this too, from in terms of the biomass of the planet, we're a vast minority. The majority of organisms are single celled, and we're looking right now, of course, at the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and thinking, oh my gosh, environmental disaster, and yet there's probably the microbial equivalent of horses with wings that are smacking their lips right now and thinking this is going to be delicious. We find these things in incredible places, and I wonder if maybe looking at that tree, we tend to put animals in that tree, and we talk about, and all the examples that we talked about, the vast majority of them were animal examples, and yet there's huge morpho space in terms of microbes.
There's a metabolic morphospace, there's a DNA morphospace, then there's a metabolite space.
Yeah, I mean, life is still sort of maybe in an RNA world too. I mean, we think proteins are cool and that they're the thing that makes the planet go around, but
No, Stephen Jay Gould hated this whole idea of the age of dinosaurs. He said, no, we are currently living and have always lived in the age of bacteria. So,
well, along the same lines, if you take that as Gould's notion, he's looking at a Cambrian world, we're talking about invertebrate animals. Okay, the whole kingdom planting doesn't come along for another couple 100 million years, or another 100 million years. So he has a very limited picture of life going on there.
But there's still this, guys. I say we stop, and if you still want to harass me, I'll hang around